I'm joined now by Sourabh Gupta. He's a senior fellow at the Institute for China-America Studies. I want to read a little bit of the press release from the European Commission because this first sentence kind of sums it up. The 20th summit between the European Union and the People's Republic of China, held today in Beijing, has underlined that this partnership has reached a new level of importance for our own citizens, for our respective neighboring regions, and for the international community more broadly. Pretty big statement. Give me your sense of how big a takeaway this is.
And actually, I'd even say that in the joint statement, they even talk in terms of civilization. It was that grand, very, very big. The statement was important, and the meeting was also very important, given the time at which it is happening. This is also, apart from just the 20th occasion on which they have met, it's also the 15th anniversary of them declaring a comprehensive strategic partnership. So they have deepened across various areas, but the focus primarily is on the economic area and in terms of defending and fortifying and deepening multilateralism.
It's interesting, though, you really see the drift now of the United States, because one of the things that you saw with Barack Obama and President Xi was the two of them coming together, really pushing the Paris climate deal through. Then you see Donald Trump move away from it. That was another thing, a big commitment today, the commitment to climate change, and making a bold statement about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had in that joint statement, they had a 5-page addendum with regard to climate change. Both these countries are very, very, I mean, the EU, I mean, the European Union and China are very, very committed on the climate change front. And it's about making next steps. It's not just about having a big, grand joint declaration. It's about the next steps which need to be taken along the way. So I think there was also a memorandum of understanding in terms of having an emissions trading system, et cetera, between the two countries. So the climate issue is safe in the hands of these two leaders, and frankly, for most of the international community, which sees this as a challenge. And hopefully, at some point of time, the United States will re-engage both at the federal level, and as we're seeing already, there's a lot of engagement at these climate conferences at the state level. So that's happening.
It seems like the United States and China are arguing a lot about intellectual property, but these two groups getting together, the EU and China, actually talking about coming up with an agreement on intellectual property. I imagine you would say that's the right way to go in terms of diplomatic efforts, figuring out where you can meet in the middle, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, they talked also related to intellectual property in terms of exchanging market access offers related to investment, their bilateral investment treaty, which they're going to call an investment agreement. Also in an area which is where trade specialists talk about a lot, it's called geographic indications. They are also going to try to have a meeting on mines and have an agreement by the end of this year. This is actually very important for the United States because the US doesn't see eye to eye with the EU on geographic indications. And so if China and EU see eye to eye out there, the US automatically becomes at a disadvantage. But setting that issue of the US being at a disadvantage aside, the real disappointment at how things have been moving is that, you know, China was this great trader, and now China has become a great capital exporter, and therefore it understands the value of rules in the international investment system, and it is going out and willingly and wants to have new rules in international investment area. This is to the US's advantage, but if the US is not going to engage China on that, then this will have to be done bilaterally with the EU, and one wishes the US would join in that conversation.
And Donald Tusk saying, you work to improve this order, you don't start a trade war. Is that message going to fall on deaf ears?
I hope not. To give a little credit to the current Trump team, yes, they have taken some actions against China, particularly the Section 301 tariffs which they have imposed, which has no basis in law. But on other fronts, including the steel and aluminum tariffs, they are going out and trying to build a legal case by which they can defend those tariffs. They are potentially defensible. And the US is going out and trying to make that defense. The US is going out and trying to make the defense with regard to that China should be treated as a non-market economy. Now, the WTO will adjudicate on this, but at least the US is making that attempt. So we shouldn't worry that the US is going to opt out of the WTO altogether, but that dispute settlement system is under some form of challenge from the United States, both procedurally and, of course, in terms of these cases. And I hope, again, that people will look at these institutions and frameworks as opportunities for having new rules which they can then adhere to so that the system is then preserved.
Sourabh Gupta, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming in.